In this video, I'm going to show you how to get great sounding audio to your live stream from the Blackmagic Designs ATEM Mini. Hello, I'm Stephen Ballast. Welcome to my channel where I explore worship technology solutions. This is part 2 in a multi-part series about the new ATEM Mini. In a previous video, I showed you how to get your ATEM Mini configured and up and running, and how to stream to Facebook Live using OBS. And in the next videos in this series, I'll talk about how to set up a multi-camera shoot with cameras that are further away than HDMI cables can run, and also how to bring your lyrics in from a projection computer and overlay that over your video. So if you haven't already, be sure and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss those. In this video, we're going to dive a little deeper into audio. If you haven't discovered this already, and you're just starting with live streaming, you'll soon discover that audio is the most important part of your live stream. Digest that for a second. Your audio is the most important part of your live stream, and it's also sometimes the hardest to get right. The first thing to think through when you are live streaming a church service or any live event is, where is your audio mix going to come from? Are you taking it straight from your house mix, a matrix of your house mix with some crowd mics added in, an aux mix, or do you have a full-fledged split to a separate mixer? That's the progression I see a lot of churches taking with their live stream audio, and where you end up being satisfied with your audio depends a lot on your environment. Things like, are you already miking all your instruments on stage for your house mix, how well your sound system is tuned, and the skills of your operator, and where your threshold is for being satisfied with what's on your live stream. No matter how your mix is being created, as long as you're coming in from a physical mixer, I recommend that you bring your audio into the Mic 1 input of the ATEM Mini. The reason for this is that in the ATEM software control, you can go into the settings through the gear icon on the lower left and click on the audio tab, and then go to the general button, and here we can switch the audio inputs from mic level to line level. If you are bringing your audio in from a device, anything other than an actual microphone, you'll want this switched to line level. This saves us from having to jump through some hoops that we've had to deal with in the past, bringing audio into the camera, especially cameras in the price range that you are probably in using this switcher. They don't have line inputs, so we've had to deal with converting the signal from our mixer, which is line level, to the mic level that the camera requires. Going in through the audio inputs of the Mini takes care of that for us. Let me pause and say something here. I've heard from a number of people that they are having sync issues between their video and audio that's coming in from the Mic 1 and 2 input. I did some testing and did find about a maximum of 5 to 6 frames of latency when the Mini was set to 1080p 60. Right about the time I was doing this testing, Blackmagic Designs released the 8.1.1 ATEM Switchers update, and after I installed the update, the difference in sync dropped to less than 1 frame, which is perfectly usable. So if you're having sync issues, be sure you've updated your switcher's firmware to at least 8.1.1. The process for doing that update is a little clunky. You first have to uninstall your ATEM control software, then download and install the 8.1.1 switcher update, which will reinstall the ATEM control software. Then when you launch the ATEM setup program, it will prompt you to do the firmware update on the Mini, and then you should be good to go. It is unfortunate that they used 1/8" connectors for the external audio inputs. They aren't the most robust connectors, and it's also not the kind of output connector you'll find on most mixers. So you'll need to determine what type of connector your mixer uses, usually that will be 1/4" or XLR, and then get the right kind of cable to make the connection to the ATEM Mini. I've got links to those types of cables, stereo 1/4" or XLR, to a stereo 1/8" connector down in the description of this video. Once we have our audio connected to the ATEM Mini, we'll need to tell the Mini to use audio from that input. So let's take a look at the ATEM control software. At the bottom, we're going to switch to the audio panel, and the first thing we need to do is turn on the Mic 1 input. Now we are getting audio from that input mixed into the output of the switcher. In this situation, you most likely do not want audio coming from your cameras, because that will be coming from the onboard mic. so be sure that both the on and AFV buttons are not turned on for each camera input. While we are here in the audio panel, let's take a look at some of the other cool features of the ATEM Mini we can use. You'll notice that it's got an EQ and a dynamic section for each channel. If you think of this as your master bus for your mix, we can do some compression and limiting that's going to help us get a more consistent level into OBS and send out over our stream without having to worry about causing our streaming audio to distort. Click on the dynamics section above the mic 1 input, and that will open this window where we can make adjustments. First, we'll turn on the limiter, and I'm going to set this to -10. Where did I come up with that number? Let's take a look at the audio meters in OBS. It transitions from the yellow section to the red section at -10, and OBS recommends that you avoid the red section, which can lead to distortion in your audio. Turn on the compressor and set its threshold to somewhere between -20 and -15, and the ratio to 3:1. Now let's take a look at what happens to the audio. Even as the signal coming in increases, and even as it fluctuates up and down a little, I'm maintaining a really consistent level in OBS. This isn't a magic bullet though. If you really start to ram your mix into the Mini, the line inputs are probably going to distort. And if you end up hitting the compressors too hard, you'll start to hear the bad pumping artifacts on the output. So in general, you'll want to be seeing the compressor kicking in regularly, especially with music content, and the limiter only kicking in occasionally. Another thing I like to do with my live stream audio is to put a low and high pass filter on it. If your mix has a lot of really low sub bass or a lot of very high frequencies from, say, your cymbals, those don't translate well when they are encoded, especially with the limited bitrate that we use for live streaming. But if those frequencies are present in your mix, the encoder will use some of your bitrate to try and encode them. So by removing them with a high pass and low pass filter, we help the audio that does get encoded to sound cleaner. It's a small thing, but what you'll discover is that a good mix is made up of a lot of little good decisions. So every little thing helps to make our mix sound better. Click the EQ section of your mic 1 input here in the audio panel, and that will open the EQ. I'm going to turn on band 1 for the high pass filter, and then set the frequency to 50 Hz. And then I'll also turn on band 6 for the low pass filter, and I'll start with that at about 14,000 or 14 kHz. One last step that we need to do that I didn't talk about in my last video about setting up the Mini, but it becomes more important now that we've done some of these audio settings, is that we don't want to have to go through this configuration, turning on mic 1 input, setting the compressor and limiter and EQ every time we turn on the switcher. So in order to save that setup, set up the switcher the way you want it, and this includes things like whether it's in cut bus or preview bus mode, and what's routed to your HDMI output. Once you get all that set up, go to the File menu and click Save Startup State. Now when we power down the switcher and then come back to it later, it's going to boot up exactly how you saved it, and you're ready to just start making your video. So that's it. You should be getting great sounding audio to your stream through the ATEM Mini. If you're looking for ways to make the actual mix that you send to the Mini sound better, I've got several videos that talk about that, and I'll link those down in the description of this video. Until next time, bye.